Good evening and welcome to the M. Keith Weikel Leadership Speaker Series. My name is Blair Sanford. I'm Assistant Dean for MBA and Master's programs here at the Wisconsin School of Business. I want to offer a warm welcome not only to the grad students and some faculty and staff in the room, but also to those of you watching on Zoom. And tonight we expected to have a conversation between Dean Samba and our guest. However, laryngitis won out. So our very capable Associate Dean, Enno Ziemsen, accepted the opportunity. So thank you, Enno. So following brief introductions, there's going to be a facilitated conversation and then time for student questions and answers. And at the time that Enno will signal we're ready for questions at the microphones, you could go to the microphones located on either side of the room. And following the talk this evening, you'll be invited back to the East Atrium where we'll have a nice selection of heavy appetizers and more beverages available for you. So, Dr. Ziemsen, in addition to being the Associate Dean of the MBA and Masters, he's Executive Director of the Erdman Center for Operations and Technology Management and the Patrick Thiele Distinguished Chair in Business. Enno joined the Wisconsin School of Business in 2015, and he has expertise in the fields of forecasting, sales and operations planning, operations strategy, product development, and product management. Our featured guest this evening, Eric Hansotia, was named Chairman, President, and Chief Executive Officer for AGCO Corporation in January 2021. Throughout his career, he has been known as a bold visionary, setting ambitious goals and delivering results for key stakeholders. He has a passion for advancing the future of agriculture and serving farmers. He also serves on the boards of Toro Company and the American Chamber of Commerce. And prior to joining AGCO in 2013, he had a successful career working for Deere & Company, where he had a number of leadership roles over his 20-year tenure. Mr. Hansotia graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Yay. Go Badgers. He has a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering, and he also earned his MBA from the University of Iowa. So, Mr. Hansotia and his wife live in the Atlanta, Georgia area, along with their 2 children. So please help me in giving a warm welcome to Mr. Hansotia.
So thank you, Blair, for the wonderful introduction. And thank you, Eric, for joining us tonight. It's a real pleasure. And thank you all for being here and joining us in this community. The Weikel series are always a wonderful experience to get to know a successful leader in business. And in this case, a double badger. Do you get twice the number of emails from the foundation?
Yes, exactly.
In all seriousness, you've had a stellar career and a base here in Madison for a while, and I'm sure you have done many things right, and maybe we have done some things right in our education over here. And we have a room here full of people who will become, some of them single badgers, and maybe some of them even double badgers like yourself. What have you taken from your journey here at UW-Madison? What has really helped you along the way? And what are some of the things that you remember, the best about Madison?
Boy, it's a long list. First of all, thank you so much for coming tonight. I couldn't be more excited to be back in Badger Country and being able to have a night of chatting back and forth and learning from one another. So I really am thankful for the foundation that was built during my years of being a student here at the campus. I'd say, you have your curriculum, and there's some wonderful professors, and I actually still have some relationships with some of them. So that was a great core. But then the ability to get outside of your core. I was in engineering, as we talked about, that's where my degree was, but I took classes in the business school, actually, and then classes in other areas, exactly. And throughout, I've got a couple slides coming up here later where I'll just plant some seeds for a few different topics that hopefully will stimulate the Q&A session. But it started the thinking about trying to create a broad foundation. There's one thing about getting very good at one thing, but if you can get a broad foundation, if I've found at least later in your career, you have a much better chance of having a better perspective because you can think about a problem from a number of different angles. And so whether that's taking classes in other curriculums or getting involved in other things. Another element that I would be very thankful for would be the internship. It's called a co-op program, but I did 5 sessions as an intern while I was going to school. Did undergrad and grad school back to back. So I did 5 sessions, and that was a huge help to me. It felt like I kind of got it to a certain level in the classroom. And then when I went over to the working world, I'm like, whoa, they're really using this. And it gave me a turbocharge of excitement. And actually my grades went up a fair bit after coming back, which was a good thing because so I salvaged it and pulled out just before. But so it was a big help to me, trying to get a broader educational background and also connected to work. So I'd encourage you to try as many things as you can.
And I must say, I've been at many different universities. This is one of the most interdisciplinary and open universities that you can be a student in, right? Many of you have access to, other places on campus. You can take other courses on campus, and whether it's in engineering, some of our business school students go to engineering, or whether it's in computer science, there are, fantastic opportunities for you on this campus. But sort of beyond that, I mean, your journey is absolutely marvelous. If I look at my own life, I can consider it sometimes a series of random events that led to me being in this chair tonight.
Yeah, me too.
There you go.
Myself, yeah.
How about you tell us about some of these random or maybe somewhat more deliberate events that led you to become a senior leader of a large global corporation?
Okay, well, great. That maybe tease up. I've just got a couple of slides and it unpacks that question a bit. So let me tell you a little bit about, I've got a little bit on our company, a little bit about me, my career trajectory, and that gets at what we're just talking about now. And then I'll close with one slide on being a leader of a corporation and how there's the planned, and then there's the unplanned, and how they collide sometimes. So I'll just take a few minutes here and tee these up. Hopefully, among all of this, we'll stimulate questions from a number of different angles. AGCO Corporation is one where we're in the farming equipment company. So you can see examples of our tractor, a planter, combine, lots of technology on these machines. So that combine, 43 computers on board, lots of automation. They all steer for themselves when you get into the field, all remote monitoring capabilities. So a lot of high-tech machinery. We're about $12.5 billion in sales. For those in the US that are familiar, it's about a Fortune 300 company, give or take. We spent a lot on engineering and more so on software engineering now. Historically, it was mechanical engineering. 23,000 employees, about half our business is in Europe, 25% in North America, and then the remainder is split between South America and then all of Asia and Africa. So very global footprint, causes you to interact with all sorts of different cultures and then business issues that pop up because of what's going on in different parts of the world. So that's kind of who AGCO is. Massey Ferguson would be a brand that maybe some of you have heard about. Our really high-tech brand that's very popular in Germany is Fendt. We're bringing that to the United States. Any Caterpillar dealer that sells farm equipment sells our machinery. So that's the company. A little bit about me. I was born in London, actually, and then moved to the United States shortly afterwards. Grew up in Wisconsin, about 150 miles north of here in Marshfield, Wisconsin, and had a great upbringing. Worked on a dairy farm, looked a lot like the picture in the upper right. Went to school, as we talked about before, for engineering, and then worked for Deere for a number of years, for about 20 years, and then transitioned over to AGCO in the same industry, and was able to work on that combine program. That was one of my projects, technology business that we created. It's essentially the business of guidance systems that do the automatic steering, telemetry, the remote monitoring of machines, and all of that. Bought a company called Precision Planting, and a number of other things, and ultimately was able to have the opportunity to lead the company. I'm the third leader of our company, and have a great fortune to be able to, during my time, hopefully help the team take it forward in an interesting way. The biggest part of my life is the picture there on the right, and my wife is nice enough to have come here with me tonight. We have two wonderful children, and everything I do up there is really a shadow of what's critical to me, and that's my family. So I'm most thankful for that. My career trajectory. This is something that, as you know, where maybe many of you are, you're investing a lot right now. You're investing in trying to better yourself and build a foundation, and you have career on your mind. And so I thought, well, why don't I tell you how mine turned out, and maybe that'll stimulate some questions. And I've got a couple points to make. So if you start at the bottom, I already mentioned I was an intern, did five of those sessions, and it helped me really kind of connect with my schoolwork. I started as a design engineer, designing product. Did that for a little while, and then followed that product into the factory, and went to a whole different, kind of started over and became a quality engineer. Had to learn that trade. Then I came back and was doing some advanced technology work, and then was tapped on the shoulder, and they said, "Why don't you go over and do manufacturing?" So started all over again, and tried and learned and taught myself manufacturing. That was in the time back then when build to demand was a big thing. Dell Computer was just coming out with changing that industry. So we were going to do the same thing in the heavy equipment business. Based on that experience, when John Deere bought this company called Timberjack, it was a forestry company, about $600 million. They asked a few of us to go into that business and be an integration leader. I was one of those, rose up through that, was operations lead, and then ran the overall forestry business ultimately. Really cool job, very global, everything from engineering, manufacturing to sales and marketing, and owning our own dealerships. And I was really kind of getting my stride there, and they tapped me on the shoulder again and said, actually, we want you to pull out of forestry and go over and run one of our combine factories, heavy union environment. We'd like you to work there for a little while. And I'm like, well, I was kind of interested in doing what I'm doing here. And they said, well, we'd really like to. So changed directions again, and did some fun things there. Got tapped on the shoulder to move to Germany, and said, why don't you put together this business of tillage, planters, air seeding, and sprayers, put it together and grow it. So tried that for a little while, and we had some good luck. We doubled the business and made it more profitable. And then came back to the US, was running a harvesting business. And that's when the opportunity with AGCO came up. Went over and was asked to work on some of their initiatives. Had some opportunity to grow my scope, and became chief operating officer, and then finally CEO. The letters on the left here mean something. And it's a point I wanted to make off this. So these are just kind of random. You talked about a random collection. There's not a rhyme or reason here. There's no common thread. Is a lot of bouncing around, restarting with different vocations. Worked on forestry equipment, construction equipment, agriculture equipment, worked in different countries, lots of different functional areas. But in the end, there's a couple of points I want to make. The first one is, anytime you see an L, that means it was a lateral move, meaning I didn't get a promotion to move to that new job. And when I put a B, that actually organizationally was a step backwards. I was a vice president, and I went back to being a general manager. And so my point is, on some of those, I'll talk about the general manager combines. That was one of my biggest growth opportunities. And it was a backwards move organizationally. And so the point here is one that I really have become a big believer in. First of all, don't try and map out your career. There's 14 jobs on the chart there. Even along the way, I could have only even imagined 7 of them. The other 7 were unimaginable. They didn't exist at the time. So if I would have spent a lot of energy saying, I want to do this, and then this, and then this, and then I'm going to get that, I'd have been putting all my energy into looking at that, when instead, my advice is focus on what you're doing and create breakthrough excellence. Generate, if you're in finance, figure out how to close the books in half the time. Figure out how to show the data in a different way that the business can get new insights. If you're in data analytics, figure out how to write a program that unlocks some trapped potential in the company. Figure out how to create excellence. Do that once, they say, oh, Sally's done a great job. Let's give her a little bit more opportunity. Now you do it again. And pretty soon you do that enough times, you get a reputation, you can have lots of open doors. So that's a scrap the career map, focus on excellence. And it leads me to the next statement. My best friend in college, my roommate at Madison, gave me this plaque. I still have it on my desk at work. And he saw that, you know, as a passion of mine before I even realized it. And it's been something I've kept with me ever since. And I'll just read it for the group in case those online can't see it. But it says, excellence is the result of caring more than others think is wise, risking more than others think is safe, dreaming more than others think is practical, and expecting more than others think is possible. And so you find your words for your excellence, but deliver it in every step you have and focus on what you're doing and create a breakthrough. So hopefully that'll resonate for some in the audience. And then the last point I wanted to offer, since I've been having the opportunity to lead the company, we've had a really nice growth trajectory. We've grown sales about 37%, but we've grown profitability almost 300%. And I had a kind of a vision in my mind of what I'd like to do with the team to really help achieve our full potential. And so I was like, well, let's redesign the strategy of the company, get very, very clear about our North Star, carve off what we don't need and really focus in on what we can be great at. And then we're going to reorganize the company to align to that strategy. And then we're going to work on culture because that's what really gets a fire in the belly for employees. And so that was the red. And like Schwarzkopf said, no battle plan survives the first shot of war. Well, that's the same thing here. Along that journey of what I wanted to do came up all of these things. I just given the opportunity to lead the company, COVID hits. And I can remember Nicole and I were walking on a Thursday night in our neighborhood, and we were talking, and we agreed, I think tomorrow we have to shut the company down. I think we're going to have to go virtual. We got to get people out of the office. And so like the university had to do, and like many other places, from Friday to Monday, we had to somehow rewire the organization. That was a big task, it felt like, until about a month and a half later when our factories started going down, one after another, because of all of the restrictions. And so pretty soon I found myself leading an organization that was now all virtual and trying to figure that out. And most of our factories were shut down for an indefinite amount of time. So we're like a sailboat in the middle of the ocean with no wind blowing. That was really scary. But we got through that. And then there's the supply chain issues. And then, okay, first one was an activist attack. Those of you that aren't familiar with that term, essentially that means someone's coming in and trying to disrupt you in a big way. and all of a sudden creates an enormous amount of required attention on that issue while you're trying to, well, you'd rather be working on trying to lead the company. So that was the first one. I talked about the other ones. Then came the Russia-Ukraine opportunity. We have a lot of employees in Russia and Ukraine, big issue. A lot of our businesses in Europe. And that one probably hit me the hardest of any on this page. Personally, I lost sleep on that one because we had employees in harm's way. And some of these others are difficult business issues. And like, man, these are hard to solve. I don't know how to solve it. But when you brought the personal impact in there, how do we get our people out of Kyiv? They're bombing our office. And so on. So that one was an interesting one. And then the cyber attack, we got hit. We have a big operation in Europe. We're seen as a bit of a leader in Germany. And when Germany announced it was weaning itself off of Russian energy, the following morning, our entire company got hit by a Russian military cyber attack. And we had to shut our own systems down. We were dead in the water, every factory, every site, everywhere in the world for 2 weeks. Nothing was going, not a bit. And so that was another one where it was like, okay, this one's all hands on deck. So those just offer opportunities to let you know that whether it's your career and you have a certain plan and life turns out differently, or when you're running a business, you have a plan and then life happens. It's part of what you need to be as a business leader. So this broad foundation, the broader the foundation, the better you can absorb a punch and keep going. So hopefully that tees up a few things that we can chat about.
So let me ask you, first of all, just a sort of personal follow-up question, because you emphasize sort of the breadth of your experiences that led you to your current role, as opposed to, I'm the finance guy, I'm going to go deep on finance and then, elevate myself up. Now that you're a senior leader in what can only be described a very complex time, how do you draw upon those experiences? Do they shape you? Do they help you? Or have you mostly moved on?
Well, I think the more breadth you have, the better perspective you have. Whenever you walk in someone else's shoes for a while, you appreciate what their world is. And so what I see is people who are in manufacturing their entire career can't understand why engineering can't just operate faster, or why purchasing can't just get the parts here on time. It's just an example. But every function has that reality. Whereas if you work in that other function, now you see, okay, I understand the complexity here. I understand why this is more difficult than I thought. And so when these issues come up, I think it's helped me a lot be able to look at the problem from a number of different vectors and say, okay, when I was in that type of role, I remember seeing this issue, although it was different, it had some of the same elements. And so that's helped. The world needs deep experts, and we have a company with lots of deep experts. So I'm not saying it's the only way, for sure not. But I think you need some really deep experts. And then if you're going to ultimately lead a business, I think it helps to have a broad base.
And let's talk a little bit about these changing times. I mean, you're the leader of what is essentially a tech company,
right?
And which takes a little bit of realization, because we hear the word agriculture and we think about earth and plants, right? But it's really technology implemented on a very complex three-dimensional landscape. And the only thing that is persistent these days is the pace of change. Even though it actually seems to be accelerating, right? So you have technological change where probably every 1 or 2 years, what you want to do in your products shifts radically, right? And your competitors are moving at a fast pace. And then you have all these, environmental things that happen, right? You have, a global pandemic, you have a war in Ukraine, and you probably have another couple of things which are on your horizon. As a senior leader, I mean, A, how do you keep your sanity? And B, what is your North Star? What do you look for guidance for? How do you, sometimes get up in the morning and figure out quickly a vision on what to do?
Well, maybe a couple comments to that. The first thing I think is getting really clear on where you personally are going to, how you personally are going to view your role, and then where the company's headed. So that one of the early things that we did as a leadership team, and we involved a couple hundred people in the company, lots of working sessions over about 6 months, is got super clear on our strategy. Where are we going to perform? Where are we not? Where are we going to focus? And redefined our purpose. And so we keep going back to that every time that we get pushed in a given direction or challenged by a competition or something like that. We go back to what's our core mission. And our purpose is farmer-focused solutions to sustainably feed our world at the top level. And so we talk about each element of that every time. Are we still being farmer-focused during this time? Are we getting farmers their parts? Are we doing so in a sustainable way? Things like that. So one is getting really a deep rudder about where the direction of the company needs to stay. And then I think the other thing is continually evolve your approach. So when we went into COVID, we had a certain communication style. Then COVID hit, and we needed to somehow connect to people, it felt like, really quickly. And so we started a daily 7-day-a-week call with our leaders. We had these things called control towers. So every group around the world would meet at 7 a.m. US time, and they'd have their what's going on meeting, and then those would feed into the one at the leadership of the company. So every day we had kind of, what new information do we have? What decisions do we need to make? What's the direction for the company? Because things were just so unknown at that time. Well, it felt like we needed to get that message out to the employees. So I started a weekly call with our top 850. And we would just play it back to them. Here's what we've learned. Here's what's changed. Here's our focus areas, and here's the direction for each of you. And then we'd open it up for questions. And so we'd say, we're going to stay here until all the questions are answered. There's no end time on this. And we did the next week and the next week and the next week. Well, I still do those calls. Now it's monthly, but it's a wide open two-way call. And now we have it for 2,200 employees. So that was one shift. And then at our leadership team meetings, we've shifted from very execution oriented. Everybody coming in and say, are you hitting your sales numbers? Are you hitting your manufacturing numbers? It was like a deliver to the plan type mode. And it's more of a management feel. And now we've shifted to, those are reports that come out beforehand. Everybody reads them offline, but we don't report out to each other. What we tackle is a couple topics each time. And we say, what are we going to do if energy gets shut off in Europe? What are we going to do in a high inflationary market when our customers aren't used to that? And so we tackle about 1 or 2 each time, and we have the whole group, gang tackle that issue. So that's what I would say is, how do you get a clear direction where you're going, to have a deep rudder, and then keep adjusting your techniques to be able to make sure you're staying agile enough to get all the input. Because for sure, I'm a leader that really believes in the answer's in the room, but the answer's not coming from me. So I'll throw in my bits, but when you combine all the bits from everybody around the room, we usually come up with a pretty decent answer.
A good team of diverse people around you that will help you figure things out.
That's right.
Let me ask you this. One thing, having taught business students for the past, 2 decades, I've seen a remarkable shift in terms of how we approach problems. 2 decades ago, the market was full of books like From Your Gut, right? I think that was Jack Welch, right? Mm-hmm. Which was all about, I would say, intuition and swagger, right? The good manager is the person who can enter the room and say, I think we should do this, and then convince everybody that that was the right course. And we were, I'm a management scientist, 15 years ago, I would give people data in a spreadsheet. They were like, don't make me do this. I'm going to have people who are going to do this for me. And I think we have a different group of students now, where if we give you data and give you, not even spreadsheet, we give you R or some other program, it's usually like, give me more, show me how to do this, show me how to run this analysis. And I think that's led to a different way of how people make decisions. Have you witnessed this throughout your career and in your current position as well?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I would fully agree that one of the big things that we try and help each other with is, where are the facts? Because in confusing times, you often hear the emotions first. Well, we've obviously got to go here. No, we got to go there. And the first reaction is usually based on emotion. And some it's fear-based. Well, we can't do that. And so you got to draw the organization into facts, because once you can get a clear set of facts, logic-minded folks will come to an aligned decision generally. The only caution I would have is, don't wait until you have 100%. So you got to find where is enough information to be able to keep the speed going. So, think about the decisions is it a one-way door decision or a two-way door decision? If it's a two-way door decision, that means that I can make it. If I get it wrong, it has the option to come back and redirect and go to the other direction. I may have lost a little time, may have invested a little bit, but it's not a killer. One-way door decision is, once I make it, it's a big deal. I can't go back. I've made a commitment to customers, or invested so much, or whatever. So two-way door decisions, you actually want to make you want to make the decision very quickly on 60 or 70% of the total data. You don't want to wait until all those decisions go to the end, because you'll be too slow. One-way door decisions, more people involved, more data, more rigor, more debate, because you can't get those wrong. So framing them up, where am I? What kind of decision is this? How much data do I really need? Have I gotten the right kind of input? And then how do I keep moving fast?
So I'm going to already pre-warn the audience that in about 2 minutes, I'm going to step away and leave you to ask the questions. So think about your questions right now. But, you call them two-way doors, right? To some degree, they're experiments, right? It's sort of a mentality that sometimes just trying out something and learning along the way is a good way of ultimately making decisions and testing things out. Do you actively do that and promote that in the culture of your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, when I first became the leader, it took a whole team of our leaders, especially those involved with innovation, and we were fortunate enough to be able to go out. We spent the whole day with Google X. It's now just called X, but it's their moonshot factory. And then we spent a whole day with Amazon. And we said, well, you folks are innovating at scale with speed on solutions that customers often don't know they had that problem. You're continually unlocking value. And so how are you doing that? And we really immersed with, how do you build the culture, and how do you have the language? What metrics do you do? How do you start projects? How do you kill projects? We talked about all those kinds of details. And one of the concepts that came out of those visits was this two-way door, one-way door. We use it a fair bit. And another one is a press release into the future about the project you're working on today. So maybe you write a press release that'll come out 5 years from now. What do you want it to say about the project you're working on? So what will customers say? How will it be differentiated in the market? What kind of value is it going to generate? Those types of things. It forces you to think about all of those elements and debate them rigorously now, as opposed to typically you end up with an idea and you go, that's a good idea, and you get people working on it, but you haven't thought through what channel is it going to go through, how's it, all these other things. And so that the two-way door, one-way door, and the press release and frequently asked questions in the future of today's innovation are two things that have helped us a lot.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a lovely conversation. But this is really also the point where we want to turn this over to a wonderful audience of, 100-something brilliant and bright minds in the room. And I'm sure you have a couple of questions for Eric. So please go ahead.
Need the mic.
Mike, can you go to the mic, please? It's right there on the side.
Hello, my name is Drew Renner. I'm a master's in supply chain student. My question is, you showed us your career path, and you said you felt like it was a bunch of random events that led to you being president and CEO of EGCO. At any point in your journey through that, did you have a thought, or was it at the beginning? Did you ever think I would want to be president or CEO, or did it kind of just get to that point and you realized, oh, this is going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely not. In the first 2/3 of my career, I was really, in the early stages, I had different sort of aspirations of like, I'd really like to be an engineering leader of an important group. That's where kind of like I had an aspiration. It didn't anything specific. And then, it kind of shifted over time, but not at all about being CEO. Until maybe the last several years, where I felt like, okay, I see an opportunity here where I think based on the background I've got, I can add value to this company. I'd really love to give it a shot and get the opportunity. So it was not an early in. So if you're saying, boy, I don't feel like I have that goal yet, maybe it's never going to happen for me, don't worry about that. Just step by step. It certainly wasn't a goal of mine.
Thank you.
But thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, should I walk over to the mic or should I just
Yes, please.
I think there's folks online somehow that then they can hear you better.
Anybody has a question?
Hey, testing. Okay, so my question is, when you look at all the different steps that you made throughout your career, there were some, maybe it seemed like smaller steps, you'd said lateral. For steps that were a pretty big step, and you felt like, did you ever get to the point where you felt like, all right, maybe there's a knowledge gap, or I don't feel like I have enough experience for this role? How did you cut down on that learning curve? Was there any kind of strategy that you had for being able to fill in the gaps for your knowledge as you took on the next challenge?
Yeah, amazingly, that happened a lot. So if you look at that career map, it happened most times, either I was going out of being a design engineer into quality, as an example. Well, I didn't know that field. I kind of gotten comfortable with how to do design in my little world, and then I had to start over and learn from scratch. And then sometimes it was more of a leadership element. When I got to be operations leader in forestry, at the time, it was an unusual small work, but most companies have like grading systems, and I was a certain grade, and I got promoted such that all the people reporting to me were a higher grade than me. So it was so they were more senior, had been around a long time. So I felt very nervous about being all of a sudden the leader of this organization, and I had been kind of working with them, and all of a sudden I was leading. So both times it was either a leadership issue or a functional issue. And I think the couple of things I would offer is, number one, be humble and just say, you know what, I don't know. And so the only way you can learn is start asking questions. And so you start asking people things like, what works really well here that you don't want me to break? What doesn't work well here that you wish someone would tell me? And what do you want to make sure we keep on track? Those three questions. And you do that every time in your career, you learn a ton that's just latent in the organization. And then secondly, if it's a content topic, go find a few experts and spend a lot of time with them. Go visit customers, drive around, whatever it is, and just try and download as much as you can from their experience as fast as you can and get in a learning mode. It's scary jumping into an area when you've had a little bit of expertise in one area and you're going to a new one. It's a scary thing that takes courage. And I always didn't, most of those times I didn't have the courage. I was forced into taking that move. And it's only looking back that you say, wow, that was a good step, but it didn't feel good at the time. So just have confidence in yourself that I'm going to learn, I'm going to get right back on this thing, but I've got to go into learn mode. Bet.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Oh, this is taller than me. Hi, I'm Victoria Davella, second year MBA in Marketing Analytics and Insights. So my question is about your excellence examples you provided before. So you said like to go further, like your data analysts, find those insights or build those models. How do you know, like, can you give an example, or when is that aha moment that I have surpassed my team where I can actually show them this insight and shop it back to them that it's worthy?
Yeah, I think the big thing is setting somewhat unrealistic expectations and just saying, you know what, I'm going to figure out how to, and I is too strong a term, I or we, it could be with your team or something like that, depending on the role you're in, but let's figure out how to create a great experience here, do something big. And so you'll go after a few of them and you won't get them all. There'll be just some that you can't unlock, but keep setting super high expectations that we're going to double this or we're going to cut this in half. And pretty soon you'll find one that you do. As opposed to many people in the working world are a bit more like on a treadmill. Work comes in, do the work, send the work on. And you can easily get into that mindset where you're really just a continuous improvement or a flow through person, as opposed to saying, I got to step back a minute, figure out what are the things I can impact and pick a couple and figure out how to really change them. And if you give yourself the permission to do that, I think you'll be surprised at what can happen.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Eric. My name is Waleed. I'm an MS in supply chain management student. I actually have two questions.
Okay.
The first question is, since we talked about Russian-Ukraine war, we talked about COVID. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the business. So the first question is actually, how do you handle uncertainty? And the second question is about, there might be a lot of daily habits that actually help you being productive and being a good leader. So if you could please share that, that would be very helpful.
I think the uncertainty is really, there's a few things that come together. As you know, in my role and in several other people's roles in the company, part of our job is to be looking out on the horizon. What are the risks coming at the company? And trying to assess which ones of those do we need to put into action mode such that we've got a playbook. So with the Russia-Ukraine one, for example, before that hit, I'd asked our European team, we got to have a playbook together. And it was interesting because even at that time, those were right close in a geographical standpoint, it was a real mixed bag and leaning toward a majority of them saying, this isn't going to happen. Probably not. But if it does, we got to have our plan. And so you got to create the anticipation such that you're ready on a few of them. But some things come out of the nowhere, like the cyber attack, we had a playbook for that too. But some things are just unknowable. Maybe COVID would be an example. And so then what you want to do is, so there's the anticipation and risk management. And then the other one is building in an organization that has flexibility and can respond and react. And so I used this term control towers before. Quickly spinning up control towers, getting the experts in whatever the topic is, getting them working cross-functionally so that they're absorbing information fast, synthesizing it, being decisive, and then deploying. So if you can get an organization that's living and breathing change and doing that at scale, I think that's the other portion of the job is building that muscle. Then you asked about daily habits. I think in any job, but as your job gets more complicated and has more dimensions to it, it's big time about priority and prioritization. So priority can show up in a number of ways. There's work-life balance. I assume maybe that's on some people's mind, and how do you manage that? And then there's about how do you manage the workload and where you place your priority. So I'll do work-life balance first. You really have to put energy to that one, and because the job has no end to it. It will absorb every minute that you have, and so there's no, okay, I'm done. There's no done. So it's really about deciding how to proportion your time. And one of the things that Nicole and I talk about are crystal moments versus rubber moments. Crystal moments are those that are rare and you never want to miss them. A graduation, a key game, soccer game, or whatever, if you drop that one, it shatters. A rubber moment may be 1 game out of 20 or something like that. You drop that one, it'll bounce back. So deciding on life, making sure you don't miss those crystal moments and dedicate your time and plan everything else around those. And if you miss a few rubber moments, that's okay.
Very much.
You're welcome.
You can go to the other side of the room.
Hi, Eric. This
Hi.
is Adam Greer. I'm a first-year MBA student here specializing in technology strategy and product management.
Great.
I think a lot of us here are aspiring leaders hoping to get into meaningful work, and you've alluded to a lot of skills that have helped you be successful over your career. If you were to sum it up, what are some of the key skills that you recommend that we hone in on now while we're here at the university to make sure that we're successful and prepared to move into some of those roles later on in our careers?
Yeah, I think I'd start with leadership skills more than technical skills. The leadership skills would be change leadership would be a big one, about the ability to really diagnose the elements of leading change, how to lead it, how to get good at that, turning it into from an art to a science. So becoming skilled at that one. Project management, many things turn into projects in the business world. And even if you don't call them a project, so all of the elements around project management of good scheduling, creating a great team, facilitation skills, things like that. Those would be some of the core leadership skills. I think communication is another one. Figuring out how to be really concise, deliver your message, and make sure you're doing that in a way that inspires the best in the organization to follow you. And then probably development. Ideally, what you want to do is, although you're delivering excellence, we talked about that one a fair bit, and you're kind of getting a good result. If you do so at the same time, you're developing your team and saying you're giving them new tools, giving them feedback, that type of thing. Once you achieve that result and you get asked to do something different, a lot of that team wants to come with you, and some of the other best ones in the company also want to go with you. And so pretty soon, the crew of those that want to be part of the change that you're a part of grows, and it's a multiplier of your impact. So those would be some of the things I'd think about. From a technical skill, given the world that we're dealing with, and you mentioned it about the importance of data analytics, data science, getting comfortable with data and the analytical elements around that. No matter what curriculum we're in, I'd encourage you to at least take some piece of that. Because even if you don't have that degree, no matter what you're doing is going to have an element of that. Hopefully that's helpful. Yep. Thank you.
Now you know why you have project management and change management as required courses in your curriculum.
Hey there, my name's Steven. I'm a second-year MBA in the HR program. And, I really appreciated your slides today. Having the visuals is always great. And the thing that really stuck out to me was the slide about resilience, specifically the part where you referred to the 2021 organization redesign and the culture change that happened in 2022. I was really curious how your company identified the need to make those changes and how you think that those changes influence the numbers that were at the top of that slide.
The strategy of the company, we had a lot of good things going on, but I don't think we were as crisp with our North Star. And really what leadership team and I wanted to do is have everybody in the company reciting the same direction and getting a very deep rubber. So that was kind of the foundation. But then that led to, when we looked at the new strategy, our historical organization, we were about 50 acquisitions that created our company. A lot of different, it was a collection of villages, great people and everything else, but it was a collection, a bit of a patchwork quilt. And so now that we're super clear on where we're going and where we're not and why and value proposition, all this kind of stuff, the next powerful thing was to get everybody lined up. So we created a few new departments, one on precision ag and digital, one on customer experience. Those are unusual departments, but we created them because they're key to our strategy. And then we went to a global brand organization. Those are just details. But the point of it is we wanted to pick the org that would totally enable the strategy and get everybody very clear. Because if you have the new strategy and the old org, it fights each other all the time. I will say that we got everybody on board quickly on the strategy. Anytime any of you are involved in an org change, it's emotional. So even if it's a great idea and we look back on it now like, wow, that was a good design. Nobody thought this was something they wanted to go through. And so now the employee survey said the number one thing when we did that before the strategy, they said, the number one thing we'd like you to fix is this organization is so complicated. We operate different in tractors than combines. We operate different in Europe than in South America. So they knew it had to get changed, but going through the change process is tough. So as an HR leader, you will go through this in your career. And as business leaders, you will be part of either leading it or be part of it. Org changes are difficult. And the only thing I can say about that is, number one, get many of your key leaders involved in designing it. You want to have lots of fingerprints and architects, but go fast. Because the minute you tell the organization there's an org change, productivity drops. Worry goes way up. And you got to get through that fast. So you want to have a lot of working sessions. So you got to tool up quietly with who are all my key influential leaders in the organization that I want to tap on the shoulder, get it all structured, get it all defined, and then tap them. You know, a lot of workshops happening super fast, get through the design and get in implementation as fast as you can. Because that period where we're going to change, but I don't know how it impacts me is not good. So that was chapter 2. We kind of gotten ourselves settled now. Everybody's put on their new shoes and they've broken them in. That's why I use the analogy at the organization is, hey, we all knew we like that new pair of shoes, but when you put them on compared to the old pair, they feel stiff. They don't feel quite right yet. So you got to walk in them for a while. You got to walk in the new organization. And the third one is culture. And that one's a big deal. Almost all of our attrition, people leaving the company, are those that we've hired since COVID. They're sitting in their living room or whatever in their office at home doing transactional work. They don't have a passionate connection to the rest of the team or their company. Now we've sent them the strategy they've done on team, but it's not the same. The way you build passion for a mission and feeling about you're really, arm in arm with your coworkers is through culture. And culture happens a lot easier when you're together. And so that's where our big focus is now, is building culture and trying to make that a big deal for our organization. Hopefully, when we look back on my tenure with AGCO, that will be one of the things that people talk about. They'll say, the results were whatever they were, but wow, is the culture exciting. That's why people want to come to work for AGCO now.
Hi, Eric. My name is William, and I'm still in the undergraduate program focusing on marketing. First of all, I just want to say you got a perfect, excellent career map. And my question is that throughout your career, what's the biggest challenge you have learned or the biggest lesson you have learned throughout your way?
Biggest challenge and the biggest lesson. So there's, lots of mistakes and lots of opportunities to learn. Maybe one of the biggest moments was when I was in the combine factory. I was kind of an ambitious person at the time, and we had taken on relaying out the whole factory, moving everything around, and it was about 2.5 million square feet, so big operation. Number 2, redo the product line, so we're bringing in new product into a new factory, and then at the same time launching SAP. So all of our data, very old, 100-year-old facility, lots of old data. And I thought, we can do this, and I was going to will the organization. Well, it didn't work out. We had this new product coming in on top of SAP. We were ordering the wrong material. Pretty soon we can't build the machines right. They're stacking up like cordwood out the back. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're in deep trouble. And so I talked a lot about change and leading change and all these kinds of things. And I feel like that's a big part of me. But that was a big lesson in you can do too much, and you can get yourself over your skis too far, and now you've caused a problem. And so it was a great opportunity for me to to really put in more mechanisms of calibration about how's the organization doing, and trying to get a little bit more of a barometer. Stretch goals are one thing, creating excellence, breakthrough, all this kind of stuff's challenge, but we got to be achievable too. So that was a mistaken judgment that I made. That was difficult. Probably a career change was moving out of forestry and coming to the combine factory. I was loving what I was doing. I was running a global business, and to go back to that one, and it was organizationally a move back. And I just had to have trust. And I had to say, you know what, I think people around me are believing I'll learn from this, and I got to have trust. I can tell you the first day I thought about it, no way is this a good idea. But it ended up being a wonderful opportunity. So those would be two examples of ones that I struggled with, but I think I learned from each of them.
Thank you.
Thank you, William.
Eric, my name is Kalyani. I'm a student of the Business Analytics program, and I want to thank the Wisconsin School of Business to give me the opportunity to be in the same room as yourself. I have two questions for you. One is, what is one principle or mindset that you think set you up for success in life?
Well, we've talked a lot about excellence, so I won't hit that one again. I think the other one I would talk about is integrity, and in that intersection with teamwork. If you go after excellence, you can go after it in the wrong way. And there's those people that you'll meet in your career that's like, that is a super high performing salesperson, or that's a great engineer, or this person in manufacturing can just get it done, but nobody wants to work with them. There's roadkill around them. They're cranky all the time, or whatever it is, or they take all the credit for themselves. They're not developing the people around them. And so those are all small examples, or it can get worse, and people who go across the line on integrity. And so figuring out how you show up, especially when people aren't watching, keeping a deep foundation of high integrity, treating people properly, developing and giving credit to others, things like that. It may actually cost you on the results of that project, because you weren't going to go across that line. But in the end, people will see that and they'll remember it. And then in the next project, they'll say, you know what, I like the way that leader handled that tough situation. So one thing is about breakthrough, but the other thing is about how you interact with other people and the role model you become. And always err on the side of integrity. Find your role models, pick your role models carefully. Don't just go for the high performer. Pick those people who, the influential leader, who everybody looks to that, because usually those people are the ones that everybody's listening to in the room. They may not be the highest in the organization, but they're the influential leader in the room. And when they speak up, they talk. So that would be a couple of thoughts I would offer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my second question is, you've had a long and successful career and a very beautiful family. How do you maintain a healthy work-life balance?
Yeah, I think it's really about being disciplined. So, the last few days I've been working on the calendar for 2023, figuring out when I'm going to be making my trips, especially the overseas trips, which shows, which conferences I'm going to attend. Now, you can't control everything. Like that last slide I had, there's the plan, and then there's what happens to you. So I recognize that you can't control it. But if you control as much as you can and play that out with some spare capacity in it, and it's scheduled, then so it's a fair bit about planning, and it's really figuring out what are the important elements in the life balance and in the work-life portion, and protecting those. And I think, a long time ago, I read this book. This name probably won't mean anything to you folks, but it was written by Lee Iacocca, and he brought Chrysler back from the dead. And he would talk about when he was CEO and he had a senior leadership team, and he said, I will put people in trouble on my senior leadership team if they don't take all their vacation. And the response was, well, that's crazy. I thought it was great if you worked every day and, like really a Chrysler person. And the concept was, well, if they can't manage their own vacation time, how are they going to manage a multi-billion-dollar business? Same thing. You got to manage your personal time, protect those crystal moments, and make sure you're protecting those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Eric. I hope you're having a great day.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vibhansh. I'm a first-year MBA student specializing in tech strategy and product management. My question to you is about opportunity costs, especially in like breakthrough areas where, let's say, if it's about integrating computers with agriculture or introducing something new like remote control functionality in machines, like you showed in the second slide. So my question is, how do you stay ahead of the curve and how do you manage the risk of opportunity costs?
That's in business, that's an ongoing continual discussion and thing to manage through, because you have a limited amount of resources. We throw a big number up there about what we're spending on tech innovation, but there's a whole lot more projects than we spent on. There's a lot more on the cutting room floor than there is on the implementation table. So it's always about, if we do this, what are we giving up? And that's not an exact science. You have to kind of marry up, where's the industry going? What's our expertise telling us? What are our customers telling us? What technology is going to be available? What kind of value proposition can we generate versus what it's going to cost us to do and the risk of likelihood of success. So it's an ongoing challenge. You put as much data to it as you can, but at some point you also have to inject some intuition and experience and always make that trade-off. I think the key question is forcing yourself to always have that conversation, as opposed to just saying, here's the project I'm working on. Right now, yesterday I was presented with, there's this wonderful project to help in our sales and operation planning, redesign that. And here's the value in it. And I told the team, that's wonderful. This project is a great project. What we've now got to compare to is what the other projects are that are competing for that investment. And so in the event that we don't select your project, or we select on a longer timeline, we've got to spread the investment out over 3 years instead of 2. Don't take that personally. It just means there's another really great idea out there that we also needed to invest in. So opportunity cost is something that is constantly in play. And you got to do your best to handle it with as much data as you can.
Thank you. Thank you for the insight.
I think we have time for one more question.
Hello, I'm Kashish. I'm an MBA student in the product management program. Firstly, I want to just mention that I saw your statistics and I saw that in spite of all these COVID and all the other challenges you had, you actually grew, or like your brand grew. And I can personally relate to this because I worked in the construction equipment and farm industry, and COVID was hell of a time for us.
Yeah.
That was a very great deal. So I have really very specific questions about what you said. So you mentioned about that, you didn't have the mapping of all of the work that you did, like the different things that you had in your career. So I want to know what suggestion would you have for all of us? Because majority of us right now would be mapping our careers,
Yeah.
what we want to do in the near future, or 7 years down the line or 4 years down the line. So what's the best way to, map one's career? And secondly, I want to know regarding, like you mentioned, there were some of the opportunities which were actually below than what you were currently then doing. So how do you pick up on opportunities? How do you analyze, okay, this is something that's going to be good, something I should pass on?
Well, I don't think there's one right answer for everybody. So I can just give you how it worked for me and how I thought about it. But I think everybody's got their own little flavor on this one. I would say that instead of mapping into the future about which jobs I wanted, what I ended up spending time on is what skill sets are still missing for me. So I was started as a design engineer. When I had the opportunity to learn more about quality, that was it happened to come through a new job, but that was another skill set that I could learn. Then manufacturing. So for whatever, I think it's more about where's my toolbox and which tools they already have and which tools are missing. That could be a job skill in a functional area, but it could be an attribute. So the change leadership we talked about a little bit before, maybe I just need to get better at that. So I'll get on a project or I'll take a class in that. So I think it's more about mapping attributes and experiences than it is about jobs. I hope one thing you took away from me today is I'm a big believer is don't map jobs. I think it actually is counterproductive. It gets your eyes focused on the wrong thing. And instead, try and do a great thing and great outcome of what you're doing, and then build over time more experiences. And then the second half of your question, what was the other element?
The opportunity. How do you analyze this is the opportunity I want to take on?
Yeah, I think so. It's a bit about an evaluation of, will this add to my toolbox? And and have the courage to restart, because almost always if you're adding a new tool, that means you don't have that tool and you're not going to be good at that tool on day one. And you're going to feel good at the old tool when you're making that evaluation. So it's going to feel very, very uncomfortable to move something that you're good at to not good at. And just push yourself into that. Much like going to school, the first day of these classes, you don't know anything about that class. And then over the course of time, you learn it. Same thing with a job. So just keep pushing yourself into new environments, and it builds the muscle of learning. I think that's ultimately, you end up being more curious, you end up being more of a learning machine, and you have a broader array of perspectives. So have the courage to do it. Thank you.
On that positive note, I would say it's 7:01 and there's drinks and food outside as far as I understand. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I can truly say you have probably changed the lives of a couple of people in the room. We all thank you very much for that, and let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you, everybody. It sure is an honor for me. I just am humbled to be back here on campus, and I was sitting in your chair in what felt to me like not very long ago, and just trying to learn and make my way through. And so I can relate to a lot of the things that you're being faced with, and they're kind of, although it's scary times right now and a lot of uncertainty, it's exciting times. And I would just encourage you, take advantage of everything the university has to offer. The facilities here, the instructors and everything else are way better than even when I was here, and it was wonderful when I was here. So you've got a wonderful platform, a wonderful opportunity. Just go after every bit of it that you can. This time will go by so fast. And you look back, I for sure look back and say, boy, I wish I would have taken even more advantage of what was here. There's so much. So you're in a wonderful time of life, and lots is in front of you. Thanks everybody for a great evening together. Look forward to chatting with you.